Hi, my name's Joe Houghton, and this is the Plus One podcast. I first met or saw Dr. Stephanie Doscher back in May this year when she was a keynote speaker at the UCD Intercultural Teaching and Learning Symposium in my hometown, Dublin. Stephanie's official job title, now this is a bit of a mouthful, Director, Office of Collaborative Online International Learning at Florida International University, which I saw, I think yesterday or the day before, was awarded the 2021 Senator Paul Simon Award for Campus Internationalization. So you must be doing something right there, Stephanie. That's brilliant. You also host the Making Global Learning Universal podcast, which I think you've had about 20 odd episodes. You're in the end of your second season now. You've co-authored a book, Making Global Universal Learning Universal, and obviously we'll put links to everything in the show notes. I loved your LinkedIn banner. You describe yourself as educator, writer, speaker, leader. Yeah, which are really four very strong words, aren't they? And four fabulous roles. So let's go through those and decompose those over the next hour. You describe yourself as a girl who never studied abroad and is 100% Ashkenazi Jew, according to DNA, essentially the least travelled, least diverse person possible, grew up to devote her life to global learning and the process of connecting people and their ideas across borders of difference. Oh my goodness. Welcome to the podcast. I have so many questions lined up for you.
I hope I have the answers. Cool beans. All right.
Oh, wonderful. So, I mean, let's start with that then, because that's a really interesting description that you gave me in the questionnaire that I sent you before we do the podcast. So you mentioned your Jewish heritage at the start of that description that ends in this beautiful connecting people and their ideas across borders of difference. So presumably your Jewish heritage is important to you if you put that in there, but also this lovely thing about connection and across borders of difference. So let's start with that. Just talk to us about that, because I love that. I think it was brilliant.
Well, I think I'm, in all honesty, still discovering what these things mean to me. I don't know if it's so much the Judaism or my Jewish history, although there might be more there. I still have more digging and discovering. But when I had that 23andMe, I'm not trying to plug it, but that was the test that I used to learn more about my DNA. I was curious to know what are the ingredients that make up this stew, right?
Yeah.
I expected that there would be some variety.
Right. Yes. Because we're mostly a mix, aren't we? We're all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought that that maybe explained why I am a connector. Okay. In my personality, in my cognitive disposition. And when I got the results and they said 100%, not 99.8, 99 point. My sister was like 99.92% Ashkenazi with also with a mixed European heritage. 100. I mean, my jaw dropped. I felt this disappointment, to be like totally honest. Like I thought, I'm so boring and so like pure. And it wasn't long before I had written this chapter, the process of which was really a growth space for me about diversity in the book that we just talked about. And then I see that I am the least diverse person on the inside that I could possibly be. And I thought, okay, so I have to unpack this. Of course, I did talk to a friend who is a geneticist. And I said, what is this? Is this even possible? And she said, oh, don't worry. They're always getting more information. More people are being tested. You'll get an email that your DNA has been reanalyzed, and it will surely come back that there's something else in there. There's more information. So I got the email not long afterwards. And once again, it was 100%. So anyway, I I then thought, as I have a tendency to do, what does this mean, right? Is there another way to look at this? And I thought, wait a minute, this might actually be really important evidence that one's educational background, that education really can influence a world perspective and one's knowledge and sense of placement in the world and in relation to others in the world. Because I also did not ever study abroad. I didn't travel a lot as a child. I studied language a little bit by default. Miami was not as diverse a place as it is now. I didn't have in my upbringing a lot of the ingredients that one usually says in our field makes a global citizen.
And is Miami home? Is that where you were born and brought up?
I was born in Atlanta, but because my parents were briefly gone. But I was actually, okay, this might be crazy, but I'm going to show you. My grandfather came in 1921 to Miami Beach. Okay. This is actually a really large, it's behind but this is my grandfather.
Oh, that's lovely.
On Christmas Day of 1921, I was walking through the airport, Miami International Airport. There was a display of photographs of Miami Beach in the 1920s, and I'm looking, and there's my grandfather. Yeah.
Wow.
So we've been around here for a while, but the reason why I say that I really do think it was education is that my teachers growing up, I do remember them definitely exposing us to a lot of different perspectives, cultural perspectives, a lot of different thinkers, talking about connection, generating ideas, helped me feel that I was part of a bigger world. And there's another story in there that has to do with FIU and global learning, which I'll tell you if you want to hear, but maybe after you ask some more follow-up questions.
Do you think the fact that Miami is kind of a coastal city affects this broader kind of view of the world? Because but almost by definition, when you're on a coastal city or whatever, there are visitors and there are, ships coming in, and there's almost more connection, isn't there, in a lot of coastal towns and cities?
Yeah, I do think that that's the case. It is a global crossroads. By the same token, South Pacific, there's that amazing song, "You've Got to Be Carefully Taught," and it's actually about, to be biased, to be prejudiced, but it goes the same way on the opposite side, that you have to learn to see where you are.
Yes.
Yeah, because I definitely did not see Miami. I saw Miami when I was younger as I felt like encased in a prison, like you feel like, oh, I got to get out of this place. Yeah. It's so this or so that.
But I suspect if you grew up in Dayton, Ohio, you'd feel exactly the same way, wouldn't you? Or Burnley in Lancashire, or Dublin, totally. Whatever. It's wherever you've been for all your life is the prison, isn't it?
Yeah. You can't see all the diversity that's all around us, because a lot of it also is cognitive diversity. That's in that chapter, right? It's two people can look exactly alike but think totally differently, or the opposite, look very different and think very similarly. So there are all these permutations and aspects of diversity that are around us all the time, but it's like it's always opening up and flowering and more layers, and that's what our education and our experience should help us to acquire, the agility to put on different lenses, the openness, the curiosity. I think that education really plays that most important role, whether that education is in a formal schooling setting or a mentor, a parent, so in your house of worship, someone that helps you realize that your way of seeing things is not the only way.
Yes.
And we can benefit by seeing things differently.
Yeah. That's funny. I always remember, I must have been 7, something like that. I always remember a maths teacher called Mr. Michel. And this is back in Leicester in the UK when I was 7. This is 50 years ago now. And I remember Mr. Michel teaching me about long multiplication. And I never got it. And I was never any good at maths. I'm still no good at maths, but I can do long multiplication. Yeah. And he showed me tricks, the maths tricks to do long multiplication. Now, don't ask me to show you them now, but he did. And it clicked and I got it. And it was one of those first moments of realization that there was other ways of doing things and there were other ways of seeing things. And I just had to find people who could teach me that stuff. And I was 7 and I still remember that 50 years later. It was such a powerful moment.
That's beautiful. And so you had the experience, but then there's the mindfulness of the experience, the making of meaning and saying, okay.
And that putting things together that weren't there before, and the possibilities of the different connections that I could now maybe visualize.
And so that's what drives me is helping higher education faculty create experiences within their classrooms in which they can guide their students through the process of seeing things differently and becoming mindful of that and leaving with that bigger lesson, with those bigger lessons of curiosity, yes, skills in connection making and idea, but that sense of I have not just had an educational experience, I've had a transformational experience. I'm not the same person I was when I started this semester.
No.
And every class could be like that.
Well, that's what we should aspire to, isn't it, as educators? Yeah.
I go for like the golden ring, if we're going to do this, why not really go for it? That's not for everybody, but for those who want to, I think we know a lot about what can generate those kinds of transformations.
I mean, good education. I mean, I say to my students, my job is to rewire your head.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, what I have in mind there is establish new ways of connecting ideas. I don't want you processing the world the same when you've finished here as you do today.
Yeah.
And whether that's project management or time management or leadership or team, I don't care. It doesn't actually matter, does it? The topic. It's what you do with information and how you process people and knowledge and relationships and views and all that stuff.
Yeah, totally agreed. Like all those disciplines are just like the vehicles for these different human skills and ways of knowing, right? Because I guess I had never thought about it this way, but being a flexible person, being a curious person, those are ways of knowing. Those cause behaviors that either attract or help us process or help us go pursue information. And so that's the really important stuff to leave every class with, unless you're going to be like a doctor or a nurse. You need to know those specific things. But having just spent a lot of time I spent recently some time in hospitals, not due to COVID, but to other family things. A person can know all of those sciencey things, But when it comes down to applying it with a real human being that is sitting right there in the chair and who needs, it's those other ways of knowing, the curiosity, the empathy, the agility, the flexibility that determine the health outcomes for the patient.
Yes.
It has to be a combination of those things.
I came across a beautiful, wonderful TED talk by a guy called Julian Treasure recently, and I don't know whether you've come across it, but Julian Treasure, and it's all about active listening and the 5 kind of key skills for listening and stuff like that. But he said, that we create our reality through our listening, because what we let in and what we don't creates our reality. And I thought that was really powerful. I thought that was really profound. And it's fabulous. Yeah.
Now what do we talk about?
Now what do we talk about? Well, I'm gonna go to your 2 and 4 word description of yourself. So your 2-word description of yourself is connector, which we've touched on and we will continue, I think, to touch on. And I love the second one, firebrand. But I mean, you seem to want to light a fire. And that's what a firebrand is. I mean, it's a flame, and you want to light that flame, don't you? And stuff, which is brilliant. So if we take your 4 descriptions, and the first one being educator, which is an interesting one to put first. So how did you get to where you are now? You've done a doctorate, you've done lots of different stuff, you've written a book, but you hadn't done your traveling and stuff like that. So what's your journey, and who are your seminal educational or other influences?
Right. Oy. Well, that's a little hard because I have this terrible memory. Like I was just talking about this with my father this weekend, that recall is not one of my it's not high on my cognitive skills, because I have a tendency to just like have an experience and it goes in, and then I can't remember the names, the dates.
I know. But, that's fine. That's fine.
So, but in general, I would say, and this is kind of the advice I'm giving my son and a couple of other people that I've talked to recently, follow your nose. That is absolutely how I got to where I am, because if I looked back, I could say every experience that I had folded into every other experience and connected here, but the honest truth is that I never had a plan.
Really? So, you mean when you were 5, you didn't kind of say to mum and dad, like, I want to be, the director of the Office of Online Internal?
Man, if you had asked me a year ago, well, maybe a little bit more than a year ago now, but like 2 years ago, right? I would just, it was a little bit of a dream, but it wasn't, I don't know, it was a plan. When I was little, yes, I did like to play teacher, but I started, my passion was also in theater, which may not be too much.
Well, there's a connection there. There's a performance, and there's the outgoing communicator. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So when I graduated university, well, the night before I formally graduated university, I had a panic attack. I ended up in the emergency room. I couldn't breathe. I had no plan. I mean, I literally had no plan. Yeah, totally. My parents, when I was in uni, always asked me, how are you feeling? Like, what did you do this weekend? My grandfather had this great question. He would ask me on Sundays when we talked, are you enjoying life? Nobody asked me, how are you going to feed yourself? Right? Like, it was an assumption. Oh, she's always been high functioning. She's always seemed like she has a plan. She must have a plan now.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I had a major in history and a double major in theater studies. And I had a summer internship gig in a theater and no plan beyond that. And I started to realize, oh yeah, everybody else I'm graduating with, they seem to have like a job or something. So I did that. I started following my nose. I worked in theaters. I did the first year of an MFA and earned a place in a very selective and incredible theater program, Trinity.
MFA?
It was an MFA. Masters in Fine Arts. Masters in Fine Arts.
Right,
yeah. And it was at this like amazing theater, Trinity Repertory in Providence, Rhode Island, and this incredible director, Ann Bogart. And there was just a few of us who got accepted. And I mean, it was really a big deal. And I thought, okay, now this is going to be it. And then everything fell apart when I was driving across country and getting away from it for the summer. And I had this idea of maybe I won't go back. And I didn't.
Right.
I didn't go back. I instead started to work as in a Montessori school and in a grocery store.
Wow. Well, Montessori is an amazing kind of, I mean, she was incredible, wasn't she? Yeah.
Yes. So I will say that the philosophy of Maria Montessori and Janice, that the master teacher with whom I worked its magic. And I started to connect personally, I think, also with the profession, and think about how the aha experience had always driven me throughout school. I'm an intellectual person. I love to have like those sparks of ideas. And it started to feel like you didn't have to pay me to facilitate this in these 3 to 5 year olds. Like I could just see it right there with their, and that's when I said, okay, I'm going to just follow my nose again and get a teaching degree and a master's in secondary education, which it was just by virtue of context, and started teaching. And next thing you know, I am, let's fast forward to 2008.
Okay.
And I was teaching, I was working on my doctoral degree in educational leadership. And I experienced 3 very intense losses of people in my life.
Right.
Like my 3 closest people within 2 months of each other, just snatched. And as it was at the end of the school year, and I was thinking, like with the theater situation, I can't go back into the classroom. I don't think I have what it takes to give to these kids. I just don't. I'm depressed and I don't have it. And my then colleague, co-author, teacher, mentor, dissertation advisor, all these different, she said, I've been invited to lead this project at FIU, Florida International University, about internationalizing the international university. That was what it was called. And she said, it's really important because it's part of our reaccreditation process. So very, very, very high stakes.
Yeah.
I'd never worked in higher education before. I really kind of had no idea what she was asking me to do. But absolutely sure, because
you were ready for a change, weren't you? Because I remember when my first wife died, just kind of around 2000, and it was the same thing. I mean, when you go through a seminal life change like that, everything moves, doesn't it? And you're open to new, very much open to new.
And I think that would be a fast forwarding, really, to now, right?
Yeah.
Right? So here we are in this global existential crisis. And before the pandemic, I had been working in this space of collaborative online international learning since 2016.
Okay.
And it is a global learning intervention as we define it, as Hillary and I have developed a definition of what that process is. Okay. And so it was just one of many things I was doing, but I became more and more passionate about its power. And but the world was like, why we want to go to the place. Of course we want to go to the places, but I guess, but you don't have to go to the places to have a transformational experience, and global learning for all is our value. So I want this to be part of our menu of opportunities for global learning experiences for our students.
And
Remember,
did they get that pre-COVID, or really has COVID lit this up?
well, no, people didn't get it. Very few people got it. Very, very few people got it. And I always share this book. I have it right next to me all the time. This is a woman named Doreen Stark Meyering.
Oh, yes, I've got this in the show notes.
Yeah, the late Doreen Stark Meyering. She was at McGill, and she talked about globally networked learning environments. And what I came to understand is that COIL is like, it has a unique power because you remain embedded in your own cultural context, and you still have to meet the other people in this third space. And it is a designed experience that is based on equal power, collaboration, complementarity, knowledge creation. Whereas sometimes our study abroad experiences, they're transformational, perhaps for different reasons. They're not necessarily as finely designed. And so some people got it, but in terms of like a broad spectrum of people, no, because it was seen as, well, if they do this online, why will they want to go abroad? And we already send so few students abroad. And then I think people are also passionate about the thing that transformed them in this field of international education. And for most of it is travel. Yes. But because I didn't have that, I was more open to, there's other ways to
yeah, of course. And it's interesting because, I mean, when I heard you speak, and I pinged you during when you were doing your speech, didn't I? I did, and kind of the day after, I kind of went onto the COIL website, which is the collaborative online international learning website in Florida. So I'm really looking forward to exploring this program with you and hopefully connecting.
I know I got to find you a match.
Yeah. So we're gonna be looking at that kind of in much more detail as we go through. But I mean, that's an exciting opportunity, both for me as an educator to kind of learn from you who've kind of already done this and know what to do, but also it's really exciting, I think, for my students potentially to connect with students in different countries in a structured way to enhance their learning journey, which would be fantastic. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that. Definitely. So so that's kind of the education journey. Writer. So you got a book. I mean, if I have a look at your LinkedIn profile, you've got a lot of publications as well. You've done
not as much as like other.
Well, maybe not, but I mean, you've got more than a handful, certainly. So, what's about writing? I mean, why do you enjoy it? And what do you think is your most insightful or important piece? If you could just be remembered for one piece of writing that you've done, what do you think it would be? Oh, there's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously tell us about the book, because that's obviously a big thing to do.
That's a big thing. And I would have to say that because I'd have to say that.
And tell us. So this book is called Making Global Learning Universal.
Universal, yeah.
And you wrote it with what, Hilary Landorf and Jaffes Hardrick.
Yeah. So so why writing? Well, I do love that process of discovery through writing. Yeah. Okay. So and I'm itching to have more time. I have such a long list of things I want to write about, but it is that process of discovery, but also I don't like I really don't love the drafting part. I love the editing part, especially. So it's the refining of the thinking and the taking away the words and the focusing of the ideas and finding a structure that will get down to the fundamentals of the thoughts, the leanest, meanest way to say the thing. I'm a very process oriented person. So I'm always looking for some way to convey the idea that kind of hacks into the thinking. And really, when I write, I don't want to write to share so much information as to help people think differently about the thing, right?
So it's more about the ideas and
Mhm.
just making those new connections and putting an idea out there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about what to think, but how to think. That's what I'm more interested in. So I want to share ideas about process. So thinking about partnerships in a different way, or internationalization, thinking about what is curriculum internationalization in a different way, thinking about this term global learning. What is global? What is collaboration?
Yeah.
Really getting into so that others can can make the ideas and produce the knowledge they want for themselves, or the outcomes in their institution, the leadership outcomes. So I like also particularly taking ideas from different disciplines and
Yeah.
applying it to education and to leadership.
That's so powerful, isn't it? Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my favorite thing.
That's wonderful when you can do that. Absolutely.
That is pretty much my writing style.
Mm.
And so, in terms of the book, taking the concept of collective impact from social change theory and applying it to educational leadership, taking Scott Page's ideas about how diverse teams work, he's an economist, and applying it to diversity, inclusion, and equity in education. That's the sort of stuff that I really love doing, and finding really impactful metaphors, the mapping idea for introducing the book. And then in the professional development chapter, looking at diffusion of innovations theory, throwing that in there, right? So all of those connection making, discovering, learning, that struggle, I really like that.
I'm looking forward to the kind of second half of the summer where I've recorded all these podcasts.
Yeah.
And then I go back to the transcripts and start to extract, if you like, the different nuggets and the ideas, which will be the second half of the book. So the first half of the book is going to be like edited transcripts. The second half of the book is going to be like, right, let's take some of these strands now and open them up and have a look at them a little bit more, and point people at resources and stuff like that. And I get to talk to you, and I get to talk. I've just edited Linda Yang's episode, which is going up tomorrow, which will be a lovely segue. The two of your episodes will follow each other, so that'll be fantastic. But I mean, so many different viewpoints and different thoughts, even in just like 10 weeks of interviews. I'm feeling very blessed by this project at the moment. Fantastic. So I mean, I love the way you describe the writing process, because it sounds to me as though the writing process kind of informs you as an educator as well. It's very much a kind of cyclic, virtuous circle.
Yeah, and it is. So that connecting, where I'm looking for different perspectives from authors to be able to apply, and then take these two previously completely disconnected ideas and take pieces of them to create a third idea, right? It's that super additivity of diversity that comes from Scott Page. That is also the essence of what global learning is all about.
Yeah.
And I say all the time that it's a process that demands others. But when we get to and I'm not saying this, like say, like I'm at a higher level of thinking, but our goal is to enable people within themselves to do that kind of writ small. So the process we say that global learning isn't so much what you learn, different languages, area studies,
Yeah.
world history, or where you learn that you have to study in a different country or in a different institution, but it's how we learn, that it's a process that engages diverse people. And we use the term diversity as broad as you can imagine it. They're all their diverse perspectives, cognitive, gender-based, disciplinary, all of it, even time, like historical and future.
Different.
Yeah, the whole just different. Yeah. So a process that engages, that involves diverse people collaboratively. So it's that idea that, okay, we all hold a piece of the puzzle, or we're all touching a different part of the elephant in the Indian aphorism.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. We all have to bring it together. So to analyze, to understand its component part, and then to address. And we use address because addressing means a lot of different things in terms of action.
Yeah.
So global
learning, yes.
It could be a solution. It could be just a movement. It could be a new idea. So it's a process that engages diverse people in collaborative efforts to understand, analyze, and address complex problems that transcend borders. And so complex is key, because it means that these are questions or problems that cannot be understood by one person perspective.
These are the wicked problems.
Totally. But they can be wicked, but they can also be very, very local, right? They don't have to be like sustainable development goal. They could be wicked problems within our lives that are complex. And the idea that it transcends borders is the fact that it transcends borders of perspective, but it also has differential impacts on different people. And so that's kind of the social justice aspect of global learning, in that we acknowledge that the way we understand, but also the way we're influenced by an issue, differs by each individual. And so in order to create a sustainable and equitable solution, we have to understand the different ways that people are impacted by these problems. That is not, and in terms of making global learning universal, it's this idea that all people, it's not should, or that this is what education is, right? Like, I mean, to me, global learning is education. It's not an add-on. It's not like it's the way education has to be for all the time. So it is an inherent understanding that I'm not going to be able to be a truly learned person sitting in my office and just reading books.
I've got to connect.
I got to connect with other people. I got to dialogue. Yeah. I got to connect outside of my brain.
So that's brilliant. And I mean, and Zoom has been fantastic for that, hasn't it? I mean, before we started the podcast, we were kind of just chatting, and I think you said kind of that you feel that you've connected with more people.
I know I have.
Post-COVID, kind of through this little camera that we're staring into. It's been amazing, hasn't it? And I mean, that's how we connected. I mean, you were talking to UCD.
It's my mission. I mean, global learning is my mission. So nothing's going to stop me from figuring out a way to facilitate this process and helping others facilitate it. It can happen in the classroom with just the students that are enrolled in my class. It can happen in a study abroad. It can happen in the community. It can happen online. It can happen it's just a process. It is modality agnostic.
Yeah, and you're employing multiple modalities, aren't you? So you're in the classroom, you're running this COIL program, which I'm still really interested in.
Okay, we'll get to that next.
You're doing the podcast. You've written
heck
a
is
book.
that?
You write articles. You speak. So all these different modalities you're employing to get the message
Connect.
out. Because
Yeah.
you're effectively an evangelist for this, aren't you? You love this. This is like you're not
I
doing
do.
you're not doing this because of the paycheck, are you? Kind of because
Uh-uh.
what somebody's paying you to do. This is kind of coming from in here.
I'll give you my PayPal. Yeah.
So I mean, FIU is where you are situated, but you're also a member of a number of other organisations as well. So tell us about some of them and why we should be interested, and which ones kind of should we look at more closely, perhaps, or if this kind of thing that you've been talking about for the last 40 minutes or so is ringing bells in people's heads.
Yeah.
What other organizations are there out there that we could join or that we could look at that would, maybe plug us in a bit more to this stuff?
Yeah. Well, in terms of internationalization and people around the world who really want to talk about this stuff, about how do we develop educational pathways or ways for our students to ways to connect people and their ideas. That's the way I say it.
Yeah.
We have NAFSA, we have the International Education Association. That's the organization that gave us that fancy award, the Paul Simon.
The Paul Simon Award, yeah.
It's an institution that is itself evolving. I would say that all of the organizations that I'm part of, AIEA, with the Association of International Education Administrators, EAIE, there's URI, like all of these international networks, international education networks, started in traditional mobility, people going and coming, right? Yeah. And dual degree, these sorts of things. And all of them are in this space of evolution.
Okay.
Everybody, because we can't do that work that we did before.
No.
We want to go back to being able to do it, but we want to do it better.
Yeah.
And we know we have not been able to move the dial on study abroad in decades, really.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And so how can we achieve these goals? There is a piece that I wrote earlier in the pandemic, and I think it was that one. I don't know. I think I'll find it and give you the link.
Dig it out and I'll put it in.
Yeah, exactly.
To it in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really about why we internationalize. Actually, it was from before the pandemic.
Okay.
It was before, because people, what is internationalization? There's this idea, it's the infusion of international aspects to all of these different business parts of our business model as an institution.
Okay.
Whether it's the teaching and learning or the professional development or the research, things like that. But isn't there a bigger why, like a deeper why? And for me, there is this, and this is probably a good segue to go into talking about COIL. There's a definition of internationalization that comes from a gentleman at INSEAD.
Yes.
So business, and his name is Gabriel Hawawini, and he says it's about connecting the institution and the people in it to the world's knowledge exchange and production network. Ooh. That's what internationalization is. Okay. It's about both receiving information, but it's also about contributing to the network and making it thicker.
It's a cycle. Yeah.
Totally. Our institution is already internationalized in some way because we are part of the network, but some of us are either building walls or just not seeing the connections. And others of us are saying, we want to get as many ways to connect our institution and the people in it as possible. And we're going to have to create some new business models
Yes.
to figure out how to do that. And why? Because that is the mission of higher education, to create and produce new knowledge. So if we're not internationalizing, we are not doing our jobs as higher educators.
So let's segue into COIL then. Okay. So you're in this part of the university now where the mission is to make these linkages and stuff. And I'm teaching a program in Dublin in Ireland, okay, with postgrad students who want to learn about project management. So what can my students hope to get from connecting with COIL?
Yeah, this is good because I wanted to talk to you about your profile. Right. Okay. I'm making you a match right now. Yeah. People will see how the honey is made.
And I mean, because I mean, take me as kind of like, an exemplar of somebody else out there who might be interested in doing the same thing, who might be interested in signing up their students with COIL. So what's in it for us, and what's in it for you, and how do we, what's the process, and yeah.
All right, let's do it. So the very first thing I'm going to ask you is, okay, you said that your students are working in project management. Is there a question, a challenge, a topic that's really hot, that's really important for your students, like a big takeaway that you really want your students to get out of?
I mean, certainly an emerging trend in the last couple of years, in the last 3 or 4 years particularly, is sustainability.
Right.
And sustainable project management, doing projects right, doing them in an ethically right way, doing them in a sustainable way from terms of supply chain, in terms of materials, into all that kind of stuff. So, the very practical stuff of procurement and supply chain and legal and all these kind of things, which perhaps might be to some perceived as, if you like, the more boring kind of bits of project management rather than the communication and the soft skills and all the rest of it. But doing that right and doing that with an eye to, sustainability and global citizenship and green issues and all that kind of stuff, that would be a big one. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, well, do you know everything about the environment and ethics? I'm like, dude, you think too much.
That's a short answer. Yeah, it's a two-word answer, that one. Yeah, two-letter answer. Yeah.
You probably do. Okay.
No.
Okay, well, that's good. Of course you don't. Okay. Of course you don't. And that's good that you don't know everything, because then you wouldn't know as much about the stuff that you know about.
I don't know everything about anything, let alone that.
Well, that's the way I feel more and more too. Okay, so supply chain, environmental impacts, ethics, legal impact, like all that stuff. So there are probably even cases.
Yeah.
That you could even like describe, like a case where do students look at cases in your course?
Yeah, I mean, we use cases, but
do.
But I'm trying to point students as much as I can away from, if you like, classic written case study analysis to more experiential learning. So, I mean, they have 2 major assignments, one with a charity and one with a local company, where they actually do a piece of work with the charity or the local company and stuff. So I wouldn't be looking specifically for kind of like an academic case study assignment.
Yeah.
I'm trying to kind of make it a little bit more real than that.
Yeah. So theoretically, you could actually have your students work with a client almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We already do.
You already do. Okay. And
yes.
That client could be anywhere in the world.
Could be anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Okay. So the way COIL works is that you get 2 or more teachers who are working with 2 or more cohorts of students, groups of students. And those 2 teachers, let's just keep it as bilateral in the simplest form right now. Those 2 teachers will say, where is there a space that our courses kind of overlap, both in terms of the calendar, like 4 to 8 weeks, but also in terms of our mutual interest in a particular topic.
Yes.
Right. And sometimes those teachers teach the same subject. Like you could find another professor of project management, say in, I don't know, like are Irish businesses or even Irish charities, are there certain connections with certain parts of the world, like maybe in terms of labor in Ireland that's coming from a particular part of the world, or there's multinational businesses that have?
Definitely. Oh, yeah, lots of that. Yes.
Like it could be Latin America, it could be Africa.
I mean, one of the student teams did a piece on an Irish fabricator company in the middle of Ireland, who are now supplying into Costa Rica.
Okay.
Great.
The former president of Costa Rica works at my university.
Right.
So, so that's interesting because we could use him as a potential connector. So that's it. So theoretically, so you could work theoretically with another project management professor in Costa Rica, where you could take a look at a multinational or from kind of that,
right. Or a company wanting to set up in Costa Rica and how that happened, and that's what the student team did actually. You
could even look at parallel case studies, right, where you could have something.
Could have 3 or 4 teams working on this and kind of working on different or similar kind of areas like that.
And theoretically, this is theoretically because I do not know your field. I'm like a 5-year-old. I heard you say environmental, ethical, legal. It could be actually a professor in Costa Rica of law students or of like environmental science students who would look at that same case and kind of unpack it from that. Okay. So, and it could be like a decision forcing case where the students would bring their
it could be marketing. It could be a marketing class who how do we do a product launch into a new geography?
You could study a third space. So you could have the students in Costa Rica and the students in Ireland looking at it. Okay, that's COIL. So my job now would be to help you find that match. Someone
you're a matchmaker, are you?
Totally. That's what I have to do as my job. That is my favorite part of my job. So there are a lot of romance metaphor aspects with. Okay. So my job now would be to cast the net and see how can I find Joe, someone who is equally as interested in these issues and has maybe a little bit of the same kind of mindset and who you hit it off with personally, right? Because it is a personal relationship.
That's right, because you're going to work together and there's going to be ups and downs and things to get through and all of the rest of it.
Totally. And you might have someone that you already know, that someone from grad school or someone that you want to just reach out to on your own who's in your professional organization or something. But also you may say, I don't want to pivot that existing relationship. Just go ahead and find me a match, Stephanie.
And I mean, the whole fun bit of this is, one, I'm making contact with you and your people, and I'm making new connections.
Exactly. This stuff is just as transformational for the professors, if maybe even more so, than it is for students. Global learning is the same way, but it's very intercultural, right? So I would look for a match. I would introduce you. You would maybe chat a little bit via email. Then we have a meeting. We talk a little bit. We say, when might you want to do this? When might you want to do this? What are our calendars? Linguistic, like those basic things. Yeah. And then you would say, we're a match, right? And we'd say, we want to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. This is when the pedal hits to the metal or the rubber hits the road or whatever.
Now there must be some kind of a framework. There must be something that you've done now that we can do this properly. kind of,
Yes,
and what are the learning outcomes, and how do we run this properly? Yeah.
absolutely. There are extremely hip faculty out there who this is in their genes, this is in your blood, and they're just like, oh, they can look at something on a piece of paper and say, we can do that.
Yeah.
But the vast majority, even those that can do it and have done it, and they've done a pretty good job, but they hit some speed bumps that could be avoided if or lessened,
Yes.
or coped with better with some professional development. And
You've got a protocol.
totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just the just the skeleton, because
Skeleton, the
you
framework. Yeah.
put on all of the so the fundamentals are that a great COIL is going to have icebreaking experiences. So the students are because these are strangers, just like you and this other partner.
They don't trust each other, and they don't know each other, and they're from different institutions, and
totally
all that stuff. Yeah.
Of course, after COIL faculty do icebreakers for the first time, and in the professional development training that we do, it is run as a COIL. So the faculty go through the same experience as their students.
And this is your plus one as well, isn't it? So when you Icebreakers is your plus one. So tell us about Icebreakers and why they're
exactly. They say, oh my gosh, I have to do this in all the courses. Like, how can I not do this in everything that I do, even if it's not COILed? They say so that's cool. So first there's the Icebreaker experiences, and those are everything from what is your name to starting to and how do you pronounce it properly.
Yes,
that's important.
And I meant to ask you about yours, because I said Doscher, and I don't know whether
you said it perfectly
or Doscher. So yeah,
you did it perfectly. So what is your name and how do you pronounce it, to what does your name mean?
Yes.
Right. How, do you think your name properly fits you? Like, you can go deeper and deeper and deeper into perspective. Mm-hmm. So developing some icebreaker experiences that usually have nothing to do with the content, but can lead into the collaborative experience. So then there's the collaborative task. And it really has to be a task where both sides or all the sides are of equal power, of equal contributions. And that takes some design chops. Mm-hmm. So in the workshop, we talk about how do you design collaboration. Collaboration does not happen by default. It happens by design.
Yes.
We get teams. We say, you're on a team, you're in a group. Here's your assignment.
Well, you start a group, but you've got to form a team, haven't you? Because that's the forming, storming.
You got to do that. Totally. You got to do that. But also, there's the design of the task.
Yeah.
And the directions we give our students. Mm-hmm. And
how is it achievable? And if they break down, how do they recover? And
even deeper. So, is the task something that does require everyone? And then how are ideas exchanged and then connected?
Yeah.
So if we say, just make a 6-slide PowerPoint, then there's nothing in that direction that guides students to bring their different ideas to the table and then connect them to create something such that at the end, if the professor said, who did that? People go, well, I kind of first did this, and then they did that, and then they did that. That's when you know collaboration happened.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So you don't want kind of Ted did slide 1 and Sue did slide 2. And no, because then it's just bolted together and no.
And that's not to say that communication and cooperation, divide and conquer, aren't part of collaboration. They are, but there's this next step. So in the training, we talk about different recipes, if you will, for designing that. And then the most important thing, and we talked about this earlier, is that mindfulness aspect. So reflecting, because the learning happens in the reflection.
Oh, always. I always have a reflection at the end of almost every module. A reflective piece, even if it's only just a few percent.
So it's like in your blood already.
Yeah. Oh, this is going to be brilliant.
So just little tweaks.
We're
Yeah,
definitely gonna have to explore this further, Stephanie. I'm conscious that we're kind of up on our
I
hour
know.
almost. I have a couple more little questions, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure.
Your next step in your continuing professional development is CITAR International.
Yeah.
Tell us about them. What's the.
So thank you. I yeah, no, thank you for being patient with my interruptions because they call that is they call that collaborative overlapping.
Okay.
That's a nice way to say interrupting. Like and people of the Jewish or Middle Eastern, Middle Europe persuasion, we tend to collaboratively overlap a lot.
Right.
New
Yeah, that's
Yorkers,
fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's terrible. Uh, Sitar.
Yeah.
So, or Sita, I might be mispronouncing it.
I think EI is I, isn't it? CITAR. Yeah. Yeah.
I have to,
I think so.
I'm just discovering this organization,
Right.
and they are a global organization that has different chapters and provide professional development and training around interculturality.
Ooh.
And I'm interested
Okay.
in I'm just kind of digging in, taking advantage of the offerings that are um, very affordable. It's one of the sources. I didn't talk that much earlier about like the sources, the people that I um, really go to in the podcast. In my podcast, the second season is a an interview with a woman named Tara Harvey, who has an
Okay.
organization called True North Intercultural. And there's also another interview with a gentleman who focuses on intergroup dialogue. So I'm trying to learn more about different dialogic forms and what I can offer to faculty in that training that is very like small but powerful, because faculty are overwhelmed,
Yes.
overwhelmed,
Yeah.
overwhelmed. So it has got to be one like super atomic explosion idea.
That they can
And
apply.
not,
That they can
yes,
apply. They can go and use and apply. Yeah.
I cannot teach every faculty everything about intercultural. I can't learn it all.
No.
So I'm looking for those small, incredibly powerful ideas to offer to them.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Right. So I'm going to have a look at CITAR as well then. That's amazing. We've covered so much and yet so little in an hour. I want to go on for another 2 hours, but I know we can't. So maybe we'll do it again sometime or
Yeah.
whatever. But this has been fantastic. I've loved listening to what you kind of your passion. It just comes
Oh,
through in everything you say, and I mean that's why I pinged you when you were talking at UCD.
oh yeah, we're on the same.
I gotta have Steph on the podcast. This is fabulous.
We're absolutely on the same wavelength. I mean, it's definitely a natural connection.
Yeah,
Feels good.
yeah, absolutely. So look, thank you so much for taking the time. This is definitely not the last time we're going to be speaking.
No.
Yeah, no, because I definitely want to follow up on COIL. So that's brilliant. Last word from you. One thing to leave us with. What's one thing that we should remember or think about in terms of what you do and why you do it?
Well, I hadn't planned this, but
Oh,
I'm just
right.
going to show you these babies that I just brought into the house. So these are a couple of flowers. These are gardenias. I wish you could smell these.
Mm.
um, but I think I'll just this will be the idea then. The reason that I grow the flowers and I bring them in and I put them next to my computer all the time is I do look for answers in nature. Yeah. How does the natural world, how do plants grow and develop? How does how do plants survive? I got to go to Iceland and watch the volcano create new land,
Yes.
um, right? And all what looked like destruction, what looked so dangerous and horrible,
suddenly becomes life.
becomes life. Yeah. And so how do those cycles continue? And then how can I help to people to see them, and then to learn how we can do the same thing, kind of break down our old ideas of who we are and others and the world around us, and then create new ideas that contribute to everyone's health.
I love that, because my two-word description of me is people gardener, which is absolutely tied into that whole idea.
Baker's in there too for me. Yeah.
Fantastic. Listen, we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much, Stephanie Doscher, for your time today.
My pleasure, Joe.